What's up, everyone? This is a special episode of the Game Time Guru because we've got the marketing guru joining the Game Time Guru. So,
What time is it? Game time!
this is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everyone? Welcome out to the Game Time Guru podcast. I am your host, Shane Larson, coming at you with another interview, another week. We're almost 4 years in the making of this show, and we're super excited to bring on our guest. His name is Mr. Russell Brunson. Russell, thanks so much for joining the show, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited we finally had a chance to do this. I'm really pumped.
Absolutely, dude. A lot of people have asked me because of the fact that I do work my full-time job for you over at ClickFunnels. They're always like, hey, do you ever talk to Russell about this stuff? I'm like, dude, even when I was in the headquarters, man, like I work 10 feet away from you, I didn't have a chance to talk about this stuff. You're always heads down, like just work. So I'm super grateful that we have the opportunity to talk about it today. So a lot of people already know you, Russell, kind of for your marketing background and just kind of what you've done as the co-founder of ClickFunnels and just marketing in general from way before ClickFunnels even. But what we want to get to know today on the show is your background in sports. And I love this because you're a man and you got a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. And I want to learn a little bit more about your story in wrestling and kind of how it's helped you in your business life moving forward. And then we'll talk a little bit about the UFC 254 matchup with Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting Justin Gaethje this weekend. So first things first, Russell, I gotta ask you, man. You know, you told us before that you're not like a major sports guy. Like you never were like a major sports guy, but you were a very, very good wrestler competing at a high level in the collegiate rank D1. When did you first get your introduction into wrestling, and why did you decide to wrestle?
Yeah, so my dad was a wrestler growing up. And so I used to always hear him talk about wrestling and tell wrestling stories and all these things. And I guess that when I was probably, I don't know if I was kindergarten or first grade, they signed me up for wrestling. And I went to I have little pictures of me in my little wrestling singlet and stuff. And apparently I hated it. I cried after every match. And so my mom made my dad like force me to quit when I was a little kid because I guess I hated it. And so I didn't wrestle again after my kindergarten year. All the way until, when I was in high school, or when I was in middle school, I thought I was gonna be a basketball player. I'd go play basketball, but I wasn't any good. But, you always have the dreams that someday you get spotted by someone and you'll be amazing. So, but I was playing basketball, and I remember 8th grade, one of my neighbors went out for the wrestling team, and he came back to church that next Sunday and was talking about it. And my dad overheard, and he's like, Russell, Ryan signed for wrestling. I'm like, okay. He's like, we're wrestlers. You need to come wrestle. And I was like, I'm a basketball player, Dad. He's like, no, we're wrestlers. And I was so frustrated, but he forced me to go. It took me in 8th grade, went to this thing, and we showed up, and I didn't know anything. I went out there, and like I just got just beat on. Practice was so hard. My little brother actually went too. My little brother was beating me up. Scott, who works for us too. My little brother Scott, he would beat me up, and I was just like, man, this is a horrible sport. And my dad's like, we have to do it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do 8th grade and 9th grade. But when I get to high school, I'm a basketball player. So I'll just use to make my dad happy. So 8th grade, I did it, and I was not very good. And then 9th grade, in Utah where I grew up, 9th grade was still in the middle school. And so, but you could get a release. So I would every day, the end of school, I would walk over to the high school, and I would have my 7th period there. And then I would go and I would wrestle on the wrestling team. And I remember I get out of school early every day. I'd walk over there, go to wrestling practice. And I didn't love it. It was just kind of this thing. And then I remember they had wrestle-offs, and I was so scared. I was just like, there's no way I'm going to beat any of these guys. And I remember there was, I think 3 guys in my weight class, and I had wrestle-offs with them, and I ended up the JV kid. I ended up in a wrestle-off beating him, and I was just like just confused. I don't know how I won. And so the coach is like, "Congratulations, Brunson, you're JV." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so scary!" And he gave me a singlet. I was like, "I'd never worn a singlet before." 8th grade, you just wear your t-shirt and shorts, and I was just like, "Oh, this is so embarrassing." And I remember, getting ready for that tournament, getting ready for the match and stuff, and then. I remember they had weigh-ins, get to weigh-ins, and you have to strip down and get on the scale to see how light you weigh. And I made weight. And then the guy who's supposed to wrestle gets on the scale, stands up there. I remember he had a mustache. And to this day, I still can't grow a mustache, right? I'm looking at this guy, and I was like, this is like a grown man. I'm going to get destroyed. I was so scared. And then I remember, an hour later, we're up in the gym, the wrestling mats are rolled out. We're about to start wrestling. I'm looking at this guy running around the mat. He's got a mustache. I'm like, this guy is going to kill me. He is like I was just so scared. And I remember finally as I turned to wrestle, we go out there, shake hands, and I look in the stands. It's my mom and dad and like a couple of parents, and that was it. It was like pretty much empty for the JV tournament or the match, We go in this wrestling match, we start wrestling, and I don't remember what happened. All I remember when it got done, I stood up, and I didn't know if I won or I didn't have any idea. Like I don't know how to keep score at this point really. And the ref raises my hand. I remember I was like, what? And I look over the guy with the mustache, and his head's dropped, and I was like, I just beat a man with a mustache. I look at my dad in the stands. He's jumping up and down. I was like, this is the greatest feeling I have ever felt in my entire life. And I was like, that day I became a wrestler. Like, I'm going to be a wrestler. And like, that's all I thought about, all I cared about. And that became my life for the next, 12 plus years. And I ended up in high school. I ended up being a state champ. I took second place in the nation, was an All-American in high school. Had a chance to wrestle at BYU for a year. And I took third place in the WAC in BYU. And then BYU dropped the wrestling program. About that time, I went on a mission for my church. I spent 2 years in New Jersey. And trying to wrestle with every human that I could find that would allow me to wrestle with them. Every member who had a wrestling son, I was like trying to fight them all. And it was really fun. And then while I was on my mission, I got an offer to come and wrestle at Boise State. Came back to Boise State, competed my last 4 years. And at the end of my senior year, I was ranked in the top 10 in the NCAA. But I didn't ever place, which was like that was my big goal, and be an All-American in college. Never actually achieved that. Achieved in high school, but never in college. And that was kind of my wrestling career. And then it ended. That's when business started. And then fast forward a couple years later, I decided I wanted to compete again. And so I don't know if you know this part of the story, but I wanted to compete again. I missed it so bad. So I actually built a wrestling training center here. I hired the Olympic Greco wrestling coach, Ivan Ivanov, and moved him to Boise. And I ended up getting about 8 different wrestlers who were training for Olympics, all moved to Boise. We had this club where we were all trying to compete and train for the Olympics. And I was trying to get back in shape because I'd taken 6 or 7 years off. And in the middle of this thing happening, it was so cool. I was just my business was supporting it, and all the wrestlers had jobs working for me. It was really, really cool. And then the whole business model we had at the time collapsed, and I ended up having to let go all the wrestlers, all my friends. I shut down the wrestling gym, and that was kind of the last, that was kind of the end of my dream trying to compete as an Olympian. And then last year I had a chance to wrestle for my first time in 15 years, which was amazing. And so that's kind of my wrestling journey in a nutshell, but it was, some of the greatest times of my life for sure.
Dude, it's so interesting to hear it from you because the general public kind of knows you for your business stuff, but we don't get to see the athlete in you. And it sounds like obviously from the 9th grade period on, that's when you really took off. Obviously state champ in high school. What weight class did you fight at, or did you wrestle at, I should say? What was the weight class that you were always at?
It shifted around. So in my junior year I was 130, then sophomore year 130, junior 140, senior 145. They cut down for the national tournament. I cut down to 140s. I took second at 140 in the nation. And then at BYU, I was 157. And then Boise State, I was 165 my last 4 years.
Goodness, so that's still really light. What would you say was your typical weight cut? Because wrestlers, one thing that a lot of people don't understand in the combat sports realm. See, in boxing, I fought for 3 years for Golden Gloves. And one of the things was I was a very, very light-sided heavyweight. So a light heavyweight. So I didn't ever have to cut weight. Everybody was dropping down from 225 down to 205, and I was sitting there at 185. So I was always at the very low end of it. So I was fighting big dudes. They would drop down. How much weight did you typically have to drop before your matches?
So I had a problem. My dad, when we were kids, used to tell me stories about cutting weight, and he made it sound so glamorous. He tells these stories and all the things, and I used to listen for hours. And I was like, that's so cool. I want to cut weight. And so when I started wrestling, I cut a lot of weight. I remember my sophomore year, I would come in Monday morning, I would weigh 160, and by Thursday I'd be 130. For the tournament. And then that was the cycle for the entire season. So it's 30 pounds my sophomore year. When I got older, it's more 18 to 20 pounds. And then my senior year in high school, actually, there were 3 kids, not in my high school, 3 kids in the country who all died from cutting weight within about a month period of time. And they changed all the rules in wrestling. And so when I got to college, it was harder to cut weight. They have some really cool rules in place now where, honestly, it's about 10 pounds is about the most you can cut, which is pretty easy. You can cut 10 pounds in a night. So that was kind of the peak, but it used to be, I had a window of time where I got to go with the hardcore weight cutters back when it was an art form, before it became, a little different than it is now. But it was a lot of weight cutting. I remember one time I tried to add up all the pounds. I looked at all my matches, all the tournaments and my things, and it was over 1,000 pounds I'd cut in my high school career, something crazy like that when you added it up.
It's unreal to me. I talk to people about that all the time. Wrestlers, especially, that is crazy. It's hard. That's outside of the sport itself, just having that is part of the sport, but outside of the competition, the weight cut it's like you said, it's like an art in and of itself. You have to like have a system down. Just real quick, do you have any like stories of a weight cut? Like, what did you do for weight cutting? Put a sauna suit on, run around in the gym with a heater on? Like, I used to watch the wrestlers during basketball practice. They'd be running around up top cutting weight and stuff and like throwing up in the trash cans. It made me sick. Do you have any stories of like cutting weight, or was it just kind of like you just did your thing and go?
No, I someday I should write a book on this, because I split tested a ton of different things, and some things are awesome, some are lame. Like, I'm sure you've probably seen wrestlers who like they'll get like a laugh or a Jolly Rancher and they'll spit in a cup all day. I did that once, ripped the trash out of my mouth and my tongue, and I lost like a fourth a pound. It was horrible. So I never did that again. I tried like binging and purging. That didn't work. Stomach acids rip out, and it's like, that was horrible for me with and like, even like I put sweats on when I run, it doesn't suck weight out that fast. So the thing I found the best for me is, and my coaches, our coaches wouldn't let you cut weight during practice because they wanted you to focus on technique. So we'd wrestle our practice. As soon as practice was done, what I do, I take off all my clothes. I put long sleeve sweats on, and then put a sauna suit on top of it, and then put sweats on top of that, and then a beanie because tons of heat comes out your head, and then a thing, and then I'd come down and I'd wrestle. And either my dad or my brother or one of my buddies would come down, and we just wrestle hard, constant movement for an hour. And usually in an hour, the first day of your weight cut, you can lose about 8 pounds an hour. Second day drops for me to drop down about 5 pounds an hour. Third day dropped down about 3 pounds an hour. And so you kind of just figure it out based on that. Whereas running, if I were to run with the sauna suit on, maybe 1 to 2 pounds an hour. So it's like wrestling would just suck way more water weight out of you than anything else. And so for me, it was a lot of wrestling. And what's cool is like you wrestling, you're like, you have all the stuff on it, so heavy, so hot, so like miserable. And then when you go, after weigh-ins happen, you drink some water, you feel good, you take all that stuff off, and you're just like, you feel so fast and easy, and like everything. It's just the contrast is interesting. It makes it, I think, way more fun when you're wrestling. Like, this seems so easy. Everyone seems so little, and their arms I can grab. They're not like having 15 layers of sweats. But it's great because you take off all the sweats, and then like you take your shirt and you can wring it out, and you see, like, think about 8 pounds of water weight. Like a gallon of water is 8 pounds. So you can take your shirt and you wring it out, and water would just like whoosh, all over the ground. It was really disgusting and cool.
Dude, I think that's so intriguing, though. That's the craziness that goes on behind the scenes. So when people say that athletes are dumb jocks, no, look at the stuff that you have to do. Like, this is stuff that you're doing. Plus, you're doing like a mathematical equation: 8 pounds of water weight. That's a gallon. This and that. So, anyways, I do have a question for you too. So you get to BYU. You mentioned that they got rid of the program. You went on a church mission. For some athletics, like especially like in the sport of football, like mainstream sports, when you switch a program, it's extremely difficult because you have a new system, right? So football has different playbooks, basketball has different playbooks, coaches have completely different systems that they have to incorporate. So that's why it's hard for some athletes to adjust to new systems. When you got to Boise State, I guess wrestling is wrestling, but do some coaches have different, I guess, the different way of going about practice?
100%.
Things? Like, was it a tough transition going from a BYU wrestling team to Boise State?
Yeah, it definitely was. And I've had a chance to wrestle a lot of coaches in a lot of different rooms, and some coaches are very technical. It's a lot of like technical, drilling, stuff like that. Others, like Boise State, wasn't so much that. Boise State was more like we got in the room and we just kicked the crap out of each other for 2 hours every day. Like, it was just hardcore wrestling every day. And so for me, it was interesting because when I got in that environment, especially after taking 2 years off, it was hard. Like, it was brutal. I was just getting beat on so much. But I got really good really fast, and I got strong really fast because it was just like, constant 2 to 3 hours a day of just hard wrestling. But the problem I also feel is like, I went from like, taking 2 years off, my level increased really quickly, but then it plateaued. And I wish other places I wrestled, other coaches I feel like had better training systems to like have, technique and like review, like after match coming back and like looking what you did wrong and stuff like that. We didn't really have a Boise State, which is why I think a lot of our athletes plateaued and never really got to. We have had 2 national champs and a bunch of placers, but we never got to the top tiers, I think, because of some of that. But yeah, it was definitely different, especially coming off 2 years off of just like, your body's soft and weak, and your muscles come back fast. It's interesting, like your muscles come back fast, but your tendons don't. And so that's why a lot of guys like come back like torn knees and elbows and all that kind of stuff. And luckily I didn't have many injuries, but I did. That took a lot longer. It took almost a year, I think, to get like the ligament strength back up to be able to handle like just the brutality of a practice,
Dude, that's a really interesting point because I too served a church mission and I was in Brazil. I didn't have the problem of gaining weight like some people do. I had the problem, I lost a ton of weight. I came back, I was 30 pounds lighter, and it was like not a good 30 pounds. I was like a skeleton. And so when I came home, I remember like just athletically at all, like anything basketball, whatever, like everything hurt because you would think it would be the other way around, but I'm like, no, dude, just because I was lighter, it didn't matter. I had to get used to the
Yeah.
flow of the sports arena, essentially. You know what I mean? So that totally makes sense. Getting back into that kind of high intensity training, especially after 2 years off, new system, everything. That could be hard for you. So, question for you, Russell. You know, you had some good competition going through in high school, good competition, obviously, in college at the D1 level.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say is the best wrestler you ever faced during your career, whether that be high school or whether that be in college, whether you won or lost, but who was the best wrestler you ever faced, and why would you consider them the best?
Oh, that's a great question. It's interesting. In my senior year, actually, if you follow UFC, Johnny Hendricks was Oklahoma State at the time, and I actually wrestled Johnny Hendricks. I lost him by 1 point. Which was frustrating because I didn't follow his UFC career for a long time. And all of a sudden he was like the top thing. I was like, it was a controversial match. I'm still angry about it. I actually found the match during, I found my old videos when he was fighting all the time. And I was like, I lost by 1 point to this guy. He literally started screaming in the middle of the match. Anyway, it's like that guy is probably on paper the best, but like the best person I wrestled, it wasn't actually in a match. They actually, Boise State hosted the World Cup one year. And it was, Joe Williams from Iowa State. He showed up. He's a 3-time NCAA champ, and he came to the Boise room. And I was like, I looked at this guy forever. I like seen him, and I was just like, he's my same weight class. He walks in. He's about a foot taller than me. His waist is like 13 inches wide. It's like his lats are like just like chiseled, like a Greek god chiseled out of stone, you know. And I go to wrestle this guy, and that was like by far the most dominant human I've ever felt. I was just like, huh. I thought, I thought I was tough, and there's a whole nother level that I wasn't even aware of before. Like, I couldn't touch his legs, I couldn't get past his arms. Like, it was just, and I wasn't the best wrestler, but I was a good enough wrestler and that guy just played me like I was a little baby. It was awesome.
That's cool, man. And I tell people that a lot, like in combat sports especially. There's always somebody that's bigger, stronger, faster, whatever. You just got to be ready. Like you might think you're the biggest, strongest, fastest, whatever, but there is always somebody out there, and it's awesome. That's kind of like the cool side about it, though. If you're a competitor, that's kind of what you want. You want the competition like that. You got to challenge yourself. I am curious too. I mean, when I used to watch wrestlers, I used to do jiu-jitsu. So we'd have a lot of wrestlers come into our jiu-jitsu gym, and they try to get a little bit of jiu-jitsu in there as well. And I'd talk to them a lot about their training for wrestling and kind of what they've learned through it. And a lot of them, I mean, it's discipline, obviously weight cutting and staying strict on everything. They have to be disciplined with the food that they eat. When everybody else in high school is eating whatever they want, they can't be doing that, especially when matches come around. Thanksgiving always sucked for them. But they would also talk about like the perseverance. I mean, wrestling practices aren't always fun. That's the same way with any sport. So I'd like to ask you, what are the top 3 lessons that you would say that wrestling throughout your life taught you in regards to what you can implement now into your business and your regular life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first one comes to mind was actually my junior year in high school. My sophomore year I did well, and obviously in high school your dream is to be a state champ. So after my sophomore year, I was like, I'm gonna be a state champ next year, and I worked like I was gonna become one. Like I killed myself all summer long. I missed no days. We ran, we lifted, we wrestled, and I got really good during that break. And I told everyone I knew, like, I'm gonna be state champ. You're gonna be state champ. And I remember the very first match of the year, we wrestled Hunter High School, and the person I was wrestling was a kid who had taken second place in state the year before, and I hadn't placed the year before, and so I knew who he was. And I was like a little nervous, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a state champ. It'll be easy. His name was Nick Fresquez, and we go out there to wrestle. And first match of the season, and he beat me really good. And I remember just being destroyed, like just oh my gosh, like I've been telling you I'm going to be this champ and all this stuff, and then I lose my very first. Of course, like it's a Saturday, so Sunday I go to church. Everyone's like, "Hey, how'd your match go?" And it's just like, I lost. Like, wait, I thought you were gonna be a state champ. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna like, just like drive you crazy, And I remember that night going to bed and just being depressed. And there's something about that feeling depression. Like I think people like it. I liked it. It feels good to be angry and mad. So I was angry and mad. But my dad had filmed the match. And my dad wasn't angry or mad. My dad was like, okay, how do we beat Nick Fresquez? Like I got to figure out how to beat this guy. So my dad stayed up all night watching the video over and over and over and over again and dissecting it, trying to figure out what he did and how he did and all sorts of stuff. And I don't think he slept one moment that entire night. The next morning I woke up and he's like, "Okay, Russell, come here. I know what you did wrong." I'm like, "Dad, like, dude, I'm the annoyed teenager." And he's like, "No, come here." Gets me on the mat. He's like, "This is what you did," and starts showing me all this stuff. And we worked on the counters to what Nick could beat me with. And we drilled the counters that morning. And then that night my dad came to practice and we drilled them again. And the next morning we drilled them. And then at night we drilled them. And we did that for 4 months, back and forth and back and forth. So much so that I knew how to, like, first off, how to defend that move better than anyone on the planet. And second off, I knew how to do the moves he was doing better than anyone on the planet. Because I had doing my dad, and my dad would defend it back and forth and back and forth. Fast forward 4 months later, we're at the state tournament, and I'm on one side of the bracket, Nick's on the other side of the bracket. And, you know, as fate would have it, we end up meeting in the finals. And I looked out, you know, I started wrestling him. I was like, I know how to beat this guy. I beat him every day, twice a day for the last 4 months. Like, I know how to beat him. And went there and I wrestled him. And what's cool is not only did I beat him, I ended up using the same move he beat me with. I used it on him, and I beat him with his move, which was crazy. And I remember that, like, afterwards thinking about that with my dad, I was like, man, I'm so grateful that my dad took that and then took the loss, and instead of being like, oh, depressed, and he's like, what did we learn? And then we figured out the tweaks and the changes, and we came back and we worked on it. I think in business, it's the same thing. I try to teach all my entrepreneurs. It's just like, you know, someone creates a funnel and they launch it. The funnel typically fails the first time you launch it. And most people fail and they're like, oh, and they're depressed. Like, this is a scam. Funnels don't work. Blah, blah, you know, whatever the thing is. Like, no. Like, that's the loss. You need the loss so you know how to win. Like, I celebrate. We put out, we lose. I'm like, sweet. Now we know what's wrong. And we watch that. And we figure out what are the tweaks, what are the changes, what things we need to make. We fix those things and we go out and we try it again. And I think like that was such a big lesson to me. And it's one of the reasons why I think so many people are scared to fail in any part of life. So they don't try. Whereas I learned from that process of wrestling, like, failure was not like something to be scared of. It's like, this is my learning moment. Like, I figured out exactly what I did wrong. Cool. Now I'm gonna go fix it and I'll beat him next time. And that was probably one of the biggest ones for me. The second one that's come to my mind is, so my junior year in high school, I won the state tournament. And then my senior year, I actually didn't. And I was way better my senior year, but, man, I had an amazing season. And then in the semifinals, I wrestled this kid who I'd beaten a couple times during the year really easily. And he caught me in a throw twice, which is really embarrassing. Anyway, he ended up beating by 2 points. And I lost. And I was just like in this thing of like same thing, like depression. Like, I lost the state title. Like, I was state champ my junior year, not my senior year. So embarrassing. So much like my identity was like that I was the best, you know, I was a state champ. And I also like had lost this thing. And I remember like part of me wanted just to like hide and run away, which I think a lot of us feel that. But instead, my dad was like, well, there's a national tournament that happens once a year. You have to be a state champ to go to it. And because you were state champ your junior year, you're qualified to go to it. He's like, do you want to go to this? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, if you're going to go, like if you go like this, like you need to get a lot better in a short period of time if you're going to do well at this thing. And he told me these stories about Dan Gable, Dan Gable's like my sports Michael Jordan, right? Dan Gable, like when he lost one match ever his senior year in college. He lost his last match. And then he was so frustrated, he ended up going to the Olympics. And anyway, he ended up winning the Olympics. Nobody scored a single point on him. And what they used to tell stories about Gable, they said that he would work out 7 hours a day because he was training for the Olympics. And then he'd go to bed at night. But then he knew that when he went to bed at night, the Russians were on the other side of the earth and they were awake training. And he couldn't sleep because he was so upset that the Russians were training. And so he'd get up and he'd run at night to make sure that they didn't get anything on top of him. Right. I mean, Dan was like the man. And again, goes to the Olympics and nobody even scores on him, wins the gold medal. And like, he's our legend. So my dad tells me the stories. Like, if you want to beat all these guys, you got to outwork every one of them. And I was like, all right. And so my dad and I figured out a plan. Like, you wake up in the morning, we run, we lift, we wrestle. And then I was like, I can't keep wrestling with people I've been wrestling with because, like, you know, I know all my guys' styles. Like, I need more competition. And so we figured out in the state who are the people that are also going to this national tournament, who are the state champs. And we set up practices with them. We would drive from school to school, sometimes 2 or 3 schools in a day, just to get with the best people and wrestle with them and then go, you know, school to school. Guys are heavier than me, lighter than me, like whatever we could do. And man, we're working, I would say minimum 7 hours a day for I think the 3 months between the state tournament when I took third all the way to the national tournament. And the national tournament, I ended up taking second place in the nation, becoming an All-American, getting college scholarships, all that kind of stuff. And people are like, well, you took third in state, but second in the nation. Like, how does that work? And it was like, because I knew that like I had to do what nobody else was willing to do if I was gonna be successful. Like, I had to put in more time, more effort, more energy. I couldn't keep working with the people I was working. I had to go find the best and train with them because they were going to make me the best as well. And, you know, there's so many parallels that in business or any part of life, right? Like, there are times when we want to launch ClickFunnels where, you know, we had a deadline, we had to meet, all these things were happening, and Todd flew out here, and Todd and Dylan, and we worked for 3 weeks straight. And we didn't sleep. Like, we worked till 4 or 5 in the morning. We go pass out on the couch, wake up at 7 or 8, and we keep going again. We had to do that to be able to get this thing off the ground, to be able to have success, right? It was like outworking everybody else. And we had to go through that over and over and over again. And I think that like perseverance and that kind of stuff, like, I don't know, you don't learn that at school. You don't learn that in any other place besides sports, I don't think, which I think is why, you know, I've had success in business, because I learned those kind of work ethic and those kind of things. So those are two. I'm trying to think of what a third one would be.
I mean, if those two are fantastic, man. So I appreciate just those. That's actually phenomenal. That's a phenomenal example, two examples of what they've taught you and how you've applied them into your life. Like it's incredible. And it's funny because as you're talking, it makes more sense now as to like I analyze people. That's just how I've always been. So when I started working for you, it's been 3 years now. I was always the quiet one. Well, I wasn't quiet in the office, but I would always like quietly like observe people. And I can see how your brain works. Like it's always going and like you're always planning the next attack. It's kind of crazy how it is. And I can kind of see just through your discussion right now, like, okay, so it's through this, like that's just how you've been. You're a competitor. Yeah. You're always going. You're outworking everyone. I've literally never met anybody who has been able to have a vision and put that into practice like you'll do whatever it takes. And then you just mentioned that right there. You do what it takes to get it done. So it's crazy. Now, Russell, when we look at this, like as we kind of transition, I told you that I wanted to talk about the UFC matches coming up in the combat world. Ultimate Fighting Championships, Bellator, any kind of mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu and wrestling is a major part of that. Everybody likes their striking, their kickboxing, their Muay Thai. It's a little more exciting, if you will, because everybody likes the broken noses and all that jazz. But really, when the grappling comes into play, it's really fun to watch. However, a lot of people think it's boring, right? They'll look at wrestlers in the UFC and they're like, oh, it's so boring. However, when you understand it, like Khabib Nurmagomedov, for example, he's an elite wrestler at an all-time high, and what he does is unbelievably like strategic. He'll go for a single or a double leg takedown. He doesn't get that. He's going for the single. He's twisting. He's doing this. He pins his body up against you. I want to know what your thoughts are just from the times you've watched Khabib, an elite wrestler, and the success he's had in mixed martial arts. I mean, the man has never lost. Like he's a stud. What are your thoughts on that? And the differences between maybe American wrestling and that of Russia, for example, is there any differences that you've noticed in his style compared to what you might have been, grown up with?
Cool. It's interesting. I remember after Khabib fought McGregor and tapped him out, there was this meme in the wrestling community that like went viral, and it said, it's the picture of McGregor sitting on the mat, like after he got choked out, just kind of like sitting there, It says that moment you realize that grappling with your buddies isn't the same as wrestling. And it's like, anyway, we all love that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. And I understand, in wrestling, it's interesting. They change the rules all the time to try to make it more flashy and more exciting, more points for throws and things like that, which encourage athletes to do more throws. And wrestling as a sport, it gets more and more fun to watch every year because of what they do. Because, they try to, they reward you with points for things that get the crowd to get excited, right? And I think it's tough because, sometimes in UFC, it's like you want to see the crazy thing. But if you look at like a real street fight, like how do most street fights end, right? Like it's on the mat, it's on the ground, like it's the real thing. And so, and you look at why Khabib's been so dominant, it's because he is great on his, as a typical fighter. But man, when he gets past here and he's on you, like you can't get away, like it's over, right? Yeah. And it's really cool. As far as different styles, so there's basically 3 styles of wrestling. And here in America, what we do in our high school and our colleges we call it collegiate wrestling or folk style wrestling. And we're the only country that does that style. And it's my personal favorite one. And then there's freestyle and Greco, which is the international styles, right? And they're different. And so freestyle and Greco, on our feet, they're very similar, but on the mat, it's way different. In high school, you're on the mat, you try to stand up and get away. But in freestyle and Greco, you lay out flat and you try to stay flat, and you're only down there for 10, 15 seconds. And if they don't get a turn, they put you back on your feet. They like on your feet's where most of the throws and the fun stuff happens, right? And so because of that, if you look at a guy like Khabib, like he's not like a traditional wrestler that I think a lot of people here in America would look at, like, oh, he's going to be good on top or on bottom. Like he's good at takedowns. Like internationally, that's what freestyle people are. Like most of the sport is run on your feet. And so like, that's what he's good at, is like, he gets in there, he's got a couple punches and then boom, he's in your legs, he's taking you down, and then he's moving to his submissions, And so it's that transition point from feet to the mat. That's wrestling. That's what he's bringing in. That's so powerful. You know what I mean? And I think this is why I'm so excited for this fight. Like, we were joking, like we should do this before this fight because what's fun about this is Justin Gaethje is a wrestler as well. In fact, Ben Sherrington, who was one of Boise State's All-Americans. Ben was one of my workout partners when I was at Boise State. He was one of Boise's national champs. We've had 2 national champs. He was the second one. After he graduated Boise State, he went to Colorado and was Gaethje's wrestling coach there. And Gaethje became an All-American. And then when he left, Sherrington continued to be his coach. And so I didn't follow UFC for a lot of years. But when Corona hit, COVID hit and everything was, there's no sports. All of a sudden UFC was the only thing that was on. I was like, I haven't watched live TV forever. So we turned it on, and And Gaethje's first fight was out there. And he comes out on the thing, and all of a sudden Sherrington comes out on the mat with him. I was like, wait a minute, that's Sherrington. Like I'm freaking. I haven't seen him in like, 15 years. So I go on Instagram, and sure enough, Sherrington's still his coach, is still wrestling coach. And so ever since then, I've been following it, and I've been watching. He's been like just dominating people, person after person. And if you watch Gaethje's style, it's interesting because he doesn't fight like a normal wrestler. Like, he doesn't take people down ever. But his takedown defense, I believe, is one of, if not the best in the UFC. And so you've got two wrestlers, one who's the best takedown guy in the UFC, one who's the best takedown defense in the UFC, who are like colliding this weekend, which is insane. So it's like the battle of two wrestlers whose styles match up so interesting that anyway, it's gonna be really fun to see kind of how that all plays out, what happens. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm stoked about it too. I was interested to see what your thoughts were there, because they are two wrestlers, two different styles, and they both have motors on them. They don't stop moving ever. It's ridiculous. And that's typically how a wrestler is. They don't ever stop moving. But Gaethje he'll keep throwing punches, and he'll try to, like, it's just going to be, I'm interested to see how it goes. Does it go to the ground? Does it stay up top? It's going to be fun. I'm actually more excited about this fight than I was the Conor fight, because styles make matchups, and I think this is a better, like, what am I trying to say? Yeah, styles make matchups, make good fights, and this is a better style in my opinion, because you got two wrestlers going at it. McGregor, I didn't think he was going to last with him because he had no takedown defense. So I'm excited about it. Now, Russell, I just really appreciate your time, and I know you're a busy guy. One last thing, I just want you to, before we sign off, just tell us, for anybody who's out there, like maybe kids who are wondering about wrestling, they're wondering about sports. Obviously, it's kind of helped you in your life. What would you say is the biggest takeaway from wrestling, and should kids consider competing in a sport, I mean, if not wrestling, if they want to learn some life lessons and be successful moving forward in their lives when it's all over?
Yeah, for sure. There's an old saying that says, how you do some things is how you do everything. And it's interesting because I see people who maybe did sports but kind of just goofed around, whatever, and they move on to their school life or business life or family life. A lot of times they kind of have that same thing. I was someone who, when I was wrestling, like, I didn't want to just, when I realized that day that I had my hand raised and looked at the guy with the mustache, I was like, I'm a wrestler. Like, I didn't want to be a wrestler. I wanted to be the best wrestler. Right. In fact, I remember there was this old DVD or old VHS tape I had of Tom and Terry Brands, who were twin wrestlers at Iowa, who were both Olympic or world champs, like some of the best wrestlers ever. And the video tape started. The first one was like, it started with Tom Brands said, "My name's Tom Brands. My goal is simple. I want to be the best wrestler in the whole world." And the next one came Terry Brands. "My name's Terry Brands. My goal is simple. I want to be the best wrestler in the whole world." And I used to watch that every morning, just that first like 30-second clip, and I'd be like, "My name's Russell Brunson. I want to be the best wrestler in the whole world." And I wanted to be the best because, like, I didn't want to just do it. I want to become the best. And I think, man, I don't care what sport you guys gravitate towards, right? There's so many amazing sports out there, but I would pick one, and then don't go in the attitude of like, oh, I'm just going to goof around. Go in the attitude of like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be the best in the whole world. Because sports, most people will not make their living as an athlete. Like, unfortunately, like, as amazing as it is and such a good opportunity, most people don't make their living as an athlete. I never made a penny as an athlete in my entire life. But what I got from the athletics was the work ethic, all those things, right? And how you do some things in life, how you do everything. So if you're going to do this, do it in a way that's going to prepare you for whatever the next phase of your life is, right? For me, it happened to be business. For you, it might be, maybe you're going to be called to be a minister of a church. Maybe you're going to be like, maybe it's for your family. Maybe it's, whatever your next calling is in life. Like, use sports and athletics as like this training ground to prepare you for whatever the next step is, whatever the next mission is going to be for you. Because if you waste that time, it can be a sad thing. So many athletes who came in who I saw who had so much potential, and then they just goofed around, didn't have much fun with it. Where I was like, I maybe didn't have the same potential. And I never became the best wrestler in the world. That was my goal. I never got it. But man, the pursuit of that, of trying to become the best, changed my life. It gave me the tools, the belief, the confidence, all the things I needed for the next phase, the next mission of my life. And so just know that going into sports, like, this is a training ground for the rest of your life. And if you prepare for it and you work hard for it, even if you don't ever hit your goals, as long as you're chasing with all you got, it'll give you what you need for the next phase of your life. And so I'm so grateful. Like, to this day, I tell my wife all the time, my kids, I was like, I would, in a heartbeat, if someone said, you can go back to wrestling in high school right now if you gave up your business, I would walk away without thinking twice. Like, that's how much that part of my life meant to me. It was more fulfilling, more exciting than anything I've done since then. But man, it was on top of that, it was the training ground that prepared me for everything else I've been doing in my life since then. So hopefully that helps motivate somebody to go and just go all in on their sport. Don't dabble, just have fun with it and do it 100%.
Appreciate that, man. For all the coaches, all the parents, and all the athletes right now listening, I hope you took notes right there, because that was some golden nuggets. And Russell, I just want to say thanks again for joining me on the show, and for all the listeners out there who've tuned in. Make sure you leave me a 5-star review on Apple. Make sure you subscribe, because we'll be coming to you every single week with a new interview. Take care.
Thanks, man.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.